beautiful women are always chased. They're never not being hit on. They go to the store, get hit on, go to the bars, get hit on, sit at home in bed, getting hit on across Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. It's left and right. So the competition for men, unfortunately, is very, very hard. So when women come around decent men, it's almost very hard to give them the time to give them a chance because your time is being split everywhere.
It's no accident that sounds like you're leveling up in a video game. 48% of 18 to 29-year-olds have an online dating profile.
Make them work for it.
45% of people say they're more frustrated with this form of dating than hopeful.
There are so many people you can connect with.
Should I swipe right?
Swipe wrong. Swipe wrong. Setting the record straight on dating apps. Everyday people telling everyday stories of the swipe right world with your host, Chaos.
Well, I know he had a good time.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and of course, good night, depending on whenever you're listening to this podcast. Welcome to the Swipe Wrong podcast. I am Chaos. I'm the dude that's taking you through this journey. We are the #1 podcast for people walking into fertility clinics asking for a refund. Welcome to the season finale. We're at season 2, episode 10. Season finale time. So for those of you who have picked us up this year, and I know a lot listen to us, power listen, binge listen. Hopefully you were on a long drive across country and you got to catch up on all the stories that we had. This is going to be the last one for episode 2, but don't fear, there'll be another new episode next week and the week after, and the week after that. You'll just get the bonus material, some of the takes that didn't quite make the initial conversations, but there will always be new stories. There's one thing that we have dedicated ourselves to, and that is no matter what, they might not be full episodes, but there'll be new content each week and every week. So that way you always have something good to listen to. So if you could do us that favor, I know you've heard me talk about it before. Follow, like, subscribe, rate us. Please rate us, leave reviews. If you need to send hate mail, swipewrongpod@gmail.com. Please feel free to send it to us. Say, hey, your voice is silly, or I don't know what's going on with the color of your hair. I don't know, whatever you want to say. Or, of course, if you want to send love, you can do it that way, too. If you want to tell us your story, you can send it via that email, or you can also give us a call, 317-426-6616. I'm really amped on what we did this week because this entire season 2, we've had so many women tell us about their stories, which I can't thank them enough. Some of the coolest stories, some of the best people we've gotten a chance to speak to. But we're actually sitting down and talking to a couple of guys tonight. So for those of you who wanted to hear the male perspective on what's going on, you get to go ahead and sit back and listen to some of the male perspective and kind of some of the things they run into. I didn't expect this going in. Like, usually when I get this side of the story, it's not nearly what I'm hearing. So I'm glad it shook out the way it did. I learned a lot. I got to meet a new friend and make a buddy, a thunder buddy at that, and a voice that you guys are pretty familiar with, you'll hear on here as well. So you know the story now. Sit back, relax, enjoy, put your feet up, enjoy your popcorn, get it buttered, don't get it buttered, whatever you want to do. And if you're in traffic, please, for the love of all things holy, don't hit that person next to you, and enjoy another threesome. And one more word, of course, from the quote-unquote legal department.
Disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions or any entities they represent. This podcast is about dating experiences. It is not to say one dating app is better or worse than another.
All right. So, Carl, I don't know your story, but how long have you been on all this madness of the apps, bro?
So I've been on and off, going on a couple of years. I just recently got into a relationship, so I pulled myself off it, and I found her on one of the apps, believe it or not. So I have a lot of actual decent things to say about using the apps. I don't have a lot of the horror stories like other people do. You definitely meet all kinds of people through them and talk to them, and the trick really is to have not very high expectations going in. That's probably the easiest way to look at it. And it makes it a lot easier. So like in the dating world nowadays, unfortunately, the days of going out to a bar or running into your future wife at a grocery store are kind of long gone. Women don't want to be talked to. They don't want to be approached. And they kind of did that to themselves. They go online and they talk to their friends, guy friends and whatnot, and they just talk so nasty about men in the way they just simply coming up and saying, "Hey, you're pretty," a simple compliment. They think you're a weirdo. So you almost are forced, at least at my age, into using these apps. Going out to the bars, even it's hard. You don't know who wants to be approached, who doesn't. You don't know who's going to be a snob to you, and it's not about being like rejected or shot down and all. It's just about having common decency. Everybody wants to be treated nicely and fairly. You approach a woman at a bar, and a lot of times they'll just be kind of jerks, and that goes for pretty much anyone my age. But at least on the apps, you have an idea what you want going in, and that's shared once you begin talking to the other person. You see if you have a mutual interest, and you go from there. It's all right, but it's definitely a lot of work still. Doesn't make it easier.
So that's like this perspective, like I don't get to hear too often, which is pretty interesting. It's the fact that when you we started calling it dating in the wild. When you try to approach somebody in a bar, it's just like, all right, I'm out in the wild and we'll see what happens. Or the grocery store or whatever, which is tough in itself to do. So like you just kind of found a lot of ugly, it sounds like, and quote unquote in the wild, and you're not exactly sure how to approach it. It's kind of how it sounds. Is that kind of right?
Yep, absolutely, you're spot on.
Yeah. So then when you're using the apps, or when you use the apps, because you're in a relationship now, which is awesome. Like that's you talk about trust issues. Once you get into starting a relationship and then shutting the apps down, the trust issues have got to be there from just some of the madness that have happened before. But once you started using the apps, then you found it a little bit easier to communicate because you kind of had common ground and kind of knew how to communicate with each other. Is that an easier way to put it too?
I say yes. I bluntly put it, the best thing I could say about apps is when you go in and you start talking to, say, a handful of different women, and you just try. It's a quick way to vet rather than going on 100 first dates, sometimes getting used or blown off or whatever the case might be. Not to say that can't happen over the apps, but when you talk to them virtually, you're not necessarily putting on a front. No one else is putting on a front. No one's trying to be fake. Like if you go on there, you're just like, hey, I'm straight up looking for a relationship, or if you're looking for a hookup, that's obviously what Tinder has been known for.
Yeah.
You can have that early vetting process, and then when you go out to a date, it makes it so much easier to be yourself naturally because you already know that person is interested in you. They're taking the time to spend their time with you, get to know you. So it takes that kind of that timidness off the table, and that's kind of what I noticed going out with these different women. I've been on more recently because I know I'm in an early relationship. It's only about, I met her in November. Before I had met her, I went out with about 4 or 5 different women. And I'll tell you what, they were all awesome. The only reason that I didn't choose to continue with them was because I just didn't have that initial spark, I guess you could say. They're all very successful women. One of them was even a data scientist with her master's degree, making good money and all this and that. It was just beautiful. But when we were sitting there and talking over a couple hours, I felt like we didn't have that connection. And that could happen on the apps. It could happen just finding somebody in a store, going to a bar. But I just think that the apps do get a bad rep. I never really liked the thought of using them. I was told in my early days of dating to use them, try them. Lots of friends like them. But I've always had they have that stigma of just used for hookups and just all these nasty stories and this and that. And to be honest, that's all out there. But you could find that with a woman at a bar anyway. I mean, you could find that anywhere. So it's a risk.
100%. So like Wood, let's take you for instance. So like when he was dating, did you guys talk about like any of his interactions? Because he met some pretty awesome people, it sounded like, and some good interactions. And did you guys like compare notes and shit?
Well, I mean, we've had some conversations about it over the time that I've been dating, but he is, I would say, well more versed because I've only been doing it for a year, and it was a new experience coming out of a marriage versus somebody who's younger and just is socially active. Like he was just saying, all of his his social circle saying, "Oh yeah, you got to use the apps and do it this way." But what I think I loved about hearing him talk about that is it's he's very old school. Like, you'd rather meet somebody organically. You'd rather meet somebody and have that initial, I don't know, spark's the right phrase, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I've shared a few stories. Mostly my horror stories about, dude, you're never going to believe what happened here. Not so much him saying, dude, you're never going to believe what happened here. But we've had conversations about distance situations where you'll meet women who maybe are too far away, and it's a bummer because they're super cool, but they're literally just too far away. So we've shared those common stories before, because I know he's had some connections that like legit were like in town for events or going somewhere where they lived out of state even. And I don't know, we would say we've compared notes because he's also been in and out as far as relationships go, a little more frequently than me. So I'm more of the active guy on the apps per se, but it is fun to get a young buck's perspective on some of this stuff as the old dude coming in out of a marriage.
Well, I think the cool thing too is, like, so last time I sat down with two people, other than when there was the video feed that we did, but it was me and Date Like a Dude and the Professor Ruins, and we sat down, and it was a couple of women's perspective, and it's just interesting to get a couple of guys' perspective who know each other, and like maybe you didn't totally share stories. Like, I think one of the funniest lines is that I've seen is when a guy goes to greet a woman in the app. He says, "Hi, ladies," and she's like, "What do you mean by that?" He's like, "Well, I know you're going to share this conversation with your friend, so I might as well say hi all to you at once." So I thought that was a solid line. So it's kind of like, I was like, all right, so how do the guys go about it? What do we do? Because like, I know, like in your situation, Carl, it's like you have a good intention. Like, you definitely seem like you're just kind of like taking it to like, all right, let's see what happens, and if there's a spark, there's a spark, and if there's not, then it's that whole Ted Lasso line where he's talking about, if they don't excite you, then what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I just one thing I've learned from previous relationships, I don't want to waste any more time. I know I'm young, I got plenty of time ahead of me. However, we're all here, with a limited amount of time. Me being closer to 30, I definitely am having, I don't want to say that midlife crisis, but I feel like I have, when I was younger, I looked at myself at this future age of where I'm at currently. I thought I'd be much farther along. And I know what I want. I know a lot of women think guys out there just want to hook up, run around. That's all they want to do at any age, and that's not how I've been. I've had three long relationships. First being 5 years, the second one being about 2.5, the third one being a year. And as you can see, they've been getting gradually smaller and smaller. It's because as soon as I have doubt, I realize I may be possibly wasting that person's time, my own time included. I choose to then leave, and try to move on to find something more meaningful and more just right. I don't believe going to a relationship anymore with doubt. I feel like starting a relationship in doubt is just a good way to shoot yourself in the foot and hurt someone else in the process. And so by being on the apps, I had my fun when I was younger. I'm sure we've all had that phase in our life. I'm looking to then find my future wife, and with the person I'm with now, she just, when we met, we were very much kind of like, screw it, whatever happens, happens. We're just trying to see if the universe aligns one way or another and gives us, that luck that we might have wanted to try to have. And so we both think very much alike. Our views, morals are all that are very much alike, and what we want is very much alike. And we just get along. So I mean, everything is just great, and that is definitely the last thing I expected to find, dating apps. And believe it or not, I used to use Bumble more often than not because the woman would have to make the first move. And to me, that was more, how do I put it? If the woman made the first move, it showed intention, and like ambition or effort was more involved on the woman's part. Whereas on Tinder or other dating apps, it just seemed like, you'd message them and they probably got an inbox full of 100. How do they weed you out? They really don't. And if they just happen to just open it, ignore you, or even just talk for 2 minutes and then you're gone, or this or that, it seemed very fake. And also there's a stigma behind it. But believe it or not, the woman I'm with now, I met off Tinder, and I never really used Tinder at all. I mean, the use on that is probably only a handful of hours. I made a profile, pretty much copied it over from Bumble, talked to like 5 different women, and those other 4, like I said, they just kind of they message you. It's not that they lose interest; they just won't even give you a chance, even though they match with you. It's really weird. It's just I feel like Tinder's overused. Therefore, they're just bombarded. It's just like a woman's Instagram. If you ever looked at a pretty girl's messages on Instagram, they're just bombarded with stuff. And Instagram in itself is almost a dating app at this point, unfortunately. But yeah, I landed. I got lucky finally, and it just seems to be working along. So I mean, I got nothing but good to say in my personal experiences with these apps. However, I will say there are definitely women out there that I've spoken to and weeded out on my own accord that seemed like they were just chasing money or had morals that were just too promiscuous, and that's just not what I was into. So I weeded them out, and then took out the women I deemed more comparable to myself and my values.
It's so funny you bring up Instagram. Like 2 weeks ago, I got this random message from this chick on Instagram. And long story short, about 5 exchanges in, she tells me her son's father's dead. He died in a car accident. And she needed $50 to buy a video game. Please send me $50.
Well, hold up. So let's not long story short this. Let's short story. Let's medium story short this, or however we want to call this. What did the opening line come out like? Hey, you've got was it deliverance type? Hey, you got a purty mouth. I mean, how did she come at you there, young man?
And it was high. And sometimes I'm not on social media very often. I'm not very good at it. I don't care. It's a spectator sport is my favorite thing to say about it. Like Facebook is the great example. But like in Instagram, you'll get messages. And I don't know if they're connected to a contact that I've known. I just see this chick in her picture. You can't blow up the picture like you can like on Facebook. So you see the pictures. If you click the picture, it takes them to their story or whatever. It's like, oh, I don't know if I know this person. So it's just like, hi. And then she hit me with, how are you? Just the intro small talk. And I was like, do I know you? She's like, oh, no, I just saw your profile and wanted to say hi. And like, that was kind of how it started. So there was just a brief exchange. I was like, well, where do you live? Like, why did you message me? And it was, oh, I'm in northern, what did she say? Like some area of Wisconsin. And I don't know if it was a radius thing and that's how she hit me, but it was a total scam. They're like, oh, I've got this son that I have to take care of. And I live with my friend or whatever, and his dad's dead. And he really wants this video game. Can you send me $50?
I mean, dude, like catfishing is a real thing. That's for sure. But like, how did she find you, Mr. Social Media Wizard? That's the interesting thing. Like, did she scrolling through, let me find people who have some sort of good looking profiles and talk about fitness? I know. And then I wonder what would happen if you said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to give you the $50, but what's the video game you're looking for? Maybe I can send you that. She probably would be like, oh, no, I think I found a way to get it. Thanks.
That's the funny thing.
The homeless guy asking for money for food.
The
and then
new,
you go for food, he throws it on the ground. He's like, no, I'm good. I'd rather have your cash.
the new panhandle.
You got to ask yourself, I wonder how often that works. Like, how many guys are actually, saying, like, hey, is she making $3,000 a week doing this?
Yeah.
Is it a thing?
You talk about a numbers game.
It's the next thing. Like you said, catfishing. It could be some guy. It could be a 13-year-old kid. You never know.
That 100% reminds me of, sorry to cut you out. That reminds me of like, there was a girl I met on one of the apps, and this was like when I first started on the apps and first moved it back to Indiana. And I think I told you about this. And, she was close to me. She's like, why don't you come over and we can have a good time? I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. She looked great. We exchanged like 4.5 messages or some shit like that. And she's like, I'm watching my niece and nephew. Can you bring over a Steam gift card?
Oh, I remember.
I was like, a Steam gift card? What? She's like, well, it'll give my niece and nephew something to do. I'm like, peace. Take care of yourself. Like, I don't mind a few hookups here and there, but that's just too messed up for me. No, thank you.
Yeah, man, that's silly.
But there's a lot of women that are my age or younger that feel that everybody does deserve the world, but they're all looking for just absolute handouts. And you just, unfortunately, in my age and below, it's gonna get only harder from here. Guys are gonna have to start, like you said, just standing up for themselves and learning when to walk away and not be the sucker, because too many guys are the sucker, and that's not how you actually earn a good woman. If you want someone to raise a family with, trust, fight by your side, you're not going to find that in somebody that's just looking for your money or for you to just do extra shit for them.
So what you're saying too is also interesting about the younger generation, even from you, because like if you think of women who are like that, usually think of beautiful women and usually are like enticing, like, hey, I'll give you all of this, and I just would like some of this. That's just, I know it's an easy way to say it, but like then you have the filters you got to figure your way through, and then you got to work your way through just what's real and what's not real, which is tough, I guess, on all ends. So what you were saying earlier about your dating experience, Carl, like what I think I'm hearing though too of why it went so well, you were dating with intent. Like you had good, like here's where I want to end up, not all right, let's see where this ride takes me.
Absolutely. I had it was purpose. And, like I said earlier, I was younger. We all been there. We've had our fun, run around, and do a little bit of stupid stuff here or there. But at this age, and even before, when I was in relationships, I'm definitely committed, looking for my future wife, trying to plan a family, so on and so forth. I see what my parents have. I was very lucky to be raised in the household I was. I acknowledge a lot of people are not fortunate like I was, and my parents have been together for over 30 years. And,
Wow.
pretty beautiful women are always chased. They're never not being hit on. They go to the store, get hit on, go to the bars, get hit on, sit at home in bed, getting hit on across Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. It's left and right. So the competition for men, unfortunately, is very, very hard. So when women come around, decent men, it's almost very hard to give them the time to give them a chance, because your time is being split everywhere. And when I see my parents, after 30 years, I see that I can recognize they've aged. They, of course, aren't as attractive as when they were younger. So you start to think looks nowadays aren't really as important. You're going to marry the person for their personality, the way they treat you, that trust, loyalty, and that connection that brings you. Being beautiful after age 50 or 60 is just a plus. That's a bonus. That's not what you should be chasing at our age. And unfortunately, the younger generation, when I was 22, I was chasing the most prettiest women around, and that didn't get me anywhere, And unfortunately, for them, even I see a lot of them, they're still single doing the same thing. And eventually, all the good guys are going to get married, and they're going to be left with the scraps that they didn't want in the first place.
That's true. We had a question asked to us when I was up there not too long ago. What was it? Do you have somebody in your life or a couple in your life that's a role model of a good relationship? Didn't we get something like that asked to us?
That is exactly the question we were asked. Like, is there someone that you would emulate in a relationship, whether married or not, but if you had someone that you would strive to want to emulate?
And it sounds like for Carl, that's your parents, huh, bud?
Absolutely. 100%. No shame in acknowledging that.
Yeah.
Well, I will vouch for his parents. They're amazing human beings. Not that he needs me to.
We're all going over for dinner. But I mean, I think that's a real thing. It was a good question. I think that was asked. And if you don't have that, or like that's not there, then like you kind of don't really have that area to strive for. And you sound like that's exactly right in front of you every day.
It is 100%. I just, my parents, the way they treat me as an individual, as their son, that's a whole nother story on its own. They do a wonderful, absolute job. I thank them all the time, up and down. My dad worked very hard to provide for us, and so did my mother. She worked all the time, and this, my father actually cooked more than my mother, because it was opportunity. It wasn't like a role as far as like man or woman cooks. It's whoever's home, take care of the children kind of deal. So my dad ended up cooking more than my mother did even. However, when they're together, just on their own, I've helped them get social media and stuff too, just to be more connected to myself and my brother as we have grown up and moved out and so on and so forth. I see them posting, stuff together, sending us videos. We have our own little family group chat, and it's adorable to see them so happy to be together 99% of the time.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Like I think the ones that have that, especially in that case, that just builds for healthier shit down the line. I mean, like, I think I have one or two of those, but like they're more pen pals than they are in front of my face. So that's probably why I'm single and just trying to figure it out as I go.
And just keep learning from all the fun mistakes you make, right?
Right. And there's a lot of fun mistakes to be had. So, you guys, so you talk to each other occasionally about it. So, like, what, I guess, like, is there like, so we're pretty much each other's group, right? Is there more people than just me in your group that kind of helps you through some of this stuff?
No, honestly, I think with him and I, it's a combination of one, he's in a relationship, so there's way less stories for him to share, and two, like the hobbies that we discuss, it just never goes down the road of relationships or women or dating or anything like that. We're normally talking about guns or home improvement projects or cars or shit like that.
Welding.
It's welding. It's a very dude relationship, minus the women conversation. And, part of that might be because I'm a divorcee chasing different things than he is. Otherwise, unlike you and I, who are walking similar paths, with him, he's got all that in front of him, and he's got a wonderful girl in his life right now, and
it makes me happy for sure.
Yeah, I tease him about it often because I always tell him I don't like it. I don't like it when he has girlfriends because it means less time for me.
That's so funny because it sounds like a good dude.
It's not that him or I are afraid to talk about any of this stuff either. Him and I very much open up when we have the time or like the situation arises. We're not timid in any of that senses. It's just we are in very different stages. So I don't have a lot of personal experience to relate to him, and he doesn't have a lot of. Well, he has that personal experience, but he can't really relate it to me. So I've never been in that situation or anywhere near it. But as far as finding the right woman and then just trying to set up your future plans, we're kind of the same goal in the long run, as far as that goes. But the age gap definitely changes things a little bit.
So when you were, I guess looking and dating with intent, like, did you have a certain checklist? Like, all right, have to like with Bumble, for example, I guess the cool thing about it is like, all right, they need to put out a little bit of intent. They need to start the effort. So they need to have this much effort, or, did they need to be within a certain career? What were some of the things that you were looking for?
So to be honest, I was looking for someone that wasn't shy to be themselves. I don't want it's, one thing I noticed is a couple of dates I went on with these women that I would deem, good people, good, honest people. It almost felt like I was at a job interview, but not me. It felt like they were trying to be too much. They were trying to sell themselves to me. And I was just there trying to have a good time, get some drinks, get some food, learn the other person. It felt too, what's the word for it? I don't want to say fake because it's not fake per se. They were trying too hard almost. But when I'm on the apps, when I was on Bumble and whatnot, really it just I didn't really necessarily have a checklist. I didn't care per se if a woman was just going through school right now or if she had a full blown career. Of course, I lean towards women that had a little bit more independence, and that's kind of because of prior relationships. I was always felt like the father. I was trying to baby them around and show them how to be an adult, unfortunately. And I wanted a woman that has more independence, didn't necessarily need me, wasn't looking at me as somebody she needed, but I'd rather be looked at as somebody to grow a partnership with together, play this game of life together. I didn't want to have to hold her hand, and I didn't want her to have to hold my hand. It's equal effort, ambition. The days of traditional women becoming housewives, staying home, cooking, cleaning are kind of gone at this point. And with that being gone, I would prefer a woman to have at least a steady career or just have an idea of where she'd like to be. And that's kind of where I started that. If that was not a factor, they didn't have that ambition or an idea or a drive, I kind of just weed them off at that point. My current girlfriend owns her own business. She's had it for 8 years now, very successful, owns a couple buildings, has her own house. She's on a roll doing it by herself. And I can appreciate all the effort she's put into that. And it's very attractive. But not to say if I met her and she didn't have any of that, I would still be probably, hopefully dating her. I don't think I would have weeded her off because her personality was so genuine, real, and we just had that click. And when you find that click, it works. It does. It happens really like instantly.
That's a big part. So, did you ever talk to her about like when she was trying to date, if like she ran into guys who were just kind of intimidated by the fact that she didn't need a guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
She tells me time and time again, everyone thinks she's intimidating. Even different women, just as friends,
Really?
find her intimidating. Yeah, that's one thing that I kind of chuckled at because when I first met her, I wasn't intimidated one bit. I think this might be a not necessarily a unique quality of myself, but a quality of myself because I'm not really intimidated by people. Everybody's human. Everybody's trying to just get their shit together, work forward, go ahead. And I think that because I wasn't intimidated, because I was so lax with her, that might have had her more attracted to myself and be more open to me. And like, instead of trying to be more reserved, she just was herself and I was myself and we just hit it off.
That's awesome. Like, yeah, because I've heard that too many times from women who kind of are career driven and take the time to just work on themselves, and they'll say the same. A lot of them will say a lot of the same thing. Like a lot of guys get intimidated, even if they just have a strong personality and a big sense of humor. Like they just
Yeah.
like guys just have a hard time with it, and that almost ruins the dating pool for them as well, as opposed to people who can just
Right.
admire what they've done.
When you look at what women like that have done, is they almost took on the masculine role. So not even that long ago, men would go out, be the ones, the breadwinners, bring home the money to the family. The wife would raise the children. You didn't have nannies or daycares or whatever. You didn't have someone else raising your kids. It was your family, your wife in the household raising the children. And when a woman goes out and finds that career, becomes the breadwinner, she's almost taking on that masculine role. And men are naturally, almost through biology, we are taking that masculine role. I don't quite know if it's systemic or like through society that have formed that, or if it's just how nature is. That when a man sees a woman that's on that same level or more, it's kind of like, whoa, like what am I going to bring to the table now? What am I going to do? And she's kind of taking care of all the business. So it might feel unnatural to some guys. That's just kind of my outside view looking in. Take that with a grain of salt. But I can see that's why maybe guys were intimidated by her.
Guys run into the ego and machismo role to where they just can't hang with it. It seems like. So yeah, I could see all that tying in together and being an issue. And if I remember right, Wood, you were on a date I think a while ago where you were sitting there, and I think wasn't the girl like in competition, and you guys just sat and had like water all night because of her ambition?
Yeah, man. She was a bikini competitor. And she was
Jesus, like that must have been a rough date, bro.
I mean,
Terrible.
she was beautiful.
I mean,
8 weeks.
She wasn't competing to make bikinis. She was competing in a bikini, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to say
Was
that.
she in a bikini on the date?
Sadly, no. It was fucking December.
Oh man.
Yeah, we went
Silly
to
December.
didn't have a reservation. Obviously, couldn't get on the spot. Tried to go bowling. It was a league night. So she was like, let's go play pool at this pool place. And the pool place that she Googled was this dive bar with 1/4 pool table. And everyone was playing. So we just sat at the bar and drank water because she couldn't drink alcohol because it wasn't part of her prep phase. Oh, man. That was funny. And then we never went out again.
So, but that was like a 5-hour date, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was, yeah. I mean, what? We probably met at 7. I didn't get home till probably midnight. So it was cool. She had a little bit of crazy in her, but she was a cool chick.
A little bit of crazy. So where did you guys meet? Do you remember what app?
That was on Bumble.
It was on Bumble. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you talk for a little while, or was it pretty quick to get to the date?
With her, I want to say it was probably a week or so before we made plans. So I would say from connection to actually getting together is maybe 2 weeks total.
Okay. All right. And
That's
then
what hitting this conversation in the beginning, and then, hey, let's secure something. All right, we'll secure something. Lining up schedules. When can we go?
all right. And then so the original date, I think maybe I didn't hear you. I know you said it, but where were you originally planning on going before it kind of went sideways?
So we were going to go to Top Golf,
Oh, that's right.
but we didn't make a reservation because it was a Wednesday night or something. And it was like, who the fuck needs a reservation at Top Golf on a Wednesday night? Well, apparently we did.
Oh, it's
And
insane.
we did not have one. So that started the journey of fun. And then we went to the bowling place, and then we went to the bar.
So you hung out at the bar for a good 4 hours, we'll say, and there wasn't a second date. Feel like a good vibe though, right?
Yeah. Again, I think we learned enough about each other that she was, really regimented. And I think it was a timing thing, because one of the first questions I asked her was, if you're in the middle of prep, how do you have time for dating? And she was like, I know. So I think she knew, and that kind of gave me the indication that I knew, like, you didn't really have time for this. You were trying to force it in.
Which is a hell of a compliment.
Yeah,
in
for
itself.
sure.
Yeah, right.
For sure. But at the same time, it's like, maybe if we were in a different place at a different time. The irony, of course, is I checked in with her a couple months after the fact. She actually had an injury and had to pull out of the competition.
Oh man, that's
sucked. Yeah. But she was an early person. I'm kind of a night owl. That type of thing. Her nutrition was a little bit different than mine. How she wanted to spend time, things she was like. I think one of the attractions that she had to me too, she said, was the fact that I had younger kids. Because she didn't think she wanted to have kids. She was thinking, if I connect with someone who has younger kids, then I could still experience what that might feel like to help be part of a family that's up and coming. Which I thought was an interesting perspective, because I'd never really thought about it in that regard when it came to dating. So that opened my eyes to a new aspect of what some women potentially could be looking for in a mate, who I don't want to have my own kids, but I still want kids in some capacity. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, Jesus, how many times, and I guess for both of you, Michael, start with you, bro, is like, how many times, like, have you gone out with, I don't know, just whoever, anybody, and like going in, you had one idea, and then you walked out of the day just going, man, that never even crossed my mind. Like, a woman would want to go out with a guy who had younger kids because she might, how many times has something like that happened? Well,
that individual was the only one where that has been brought as a topic, like we've talked about it. So I can only speak to that one occurrence.
But anything else like that, I guess.
I've had situations where you come in and, the women who are looking for marriage, and they don't say they're looking for marriage. The women who are just looking for, a one-nighter or, just a quick hit. The women who are literally looking to just be pampered and just money thrown at them, and it's my favorite word, bougie. I've had a couple of those where, hey, we're meeting in the middle. Are you familiar with the area? I'm not. Is there a place you have? And it's like the fucking bougiest of bougie places that you could find in Google. I feel like let's pick the 5-star $4 or $4 sign place to see how this goes.
Oh, I gotcha.
Versus like, hey, let's just hit up the local pub and grab a drink and meet. Because I'm not a big fan of dinner dates. I think it's weird and awkward, and we've talked about that before. I'd rather do something or just grab a coffee or a cocktail and exchange pleasantries and see if there's a vibe. So I think the bougie thing is probably more common than not, which I guess alludes to kind of what Carl was saying earlier. But the kid thing, I think the struggle that I've had, and I think as I've gotten deeper into my experience with the swipe apps, is it's really hard to date women who don't have kids when you have kids. And I don't know if for you, bro, if it's the inverse where it's hard to date women with children because you don't have children. And I'm assuming it's not quite as the same. But, when you talked about scheduling conflicts and flexibility and things of that nature, in my experience, women who don't have the experience of kids are almost annoyed at how limited my time can sometimes be, as if it's not worth the patience to go out.
They're not the center of your attention,
right?
In some cases, and they may have a trouble. Which I think we've had somebody on an earlier season, I think last season, who said almost the exact opposite of like it was hard for her to date men with or men without kids, and she had kids because they didn't understand that they couldn't be the center of her world. So it's kind of weird. It's just single to single. It's kind of weird how that just whole dynamic works out. What did you run into, Carl, or did you run into anything that just kind of opened your eyes?
Not necessarily. As far as the whole kids thing goes, I did talk lightly with a woman who had children who virtually we got along with very well. Morals, ideals, just fun activities. Just getting to know each other over text was actually pretty great.
Cool.
But then it kind of came into play that she had children already, and that I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but for myself, that was a turnoff. I personally, I was not ready to get into someone else's life and raise someone else's kid. Not having any of my own, being this, maybe if I was a little bit older, I'd be more accepting of it. But I decided pretty early on, maybe that is a little bit prejudiced, but early on I decided that, hey, I wasn't going to pursue that option. That was actually quite a while ago.
And I think that's just you knowing what you want and what you don't want. I don't think there's anything like, hey, I do want this, and if I can find it, I'm gonna go find it. So I don't think there's anything crazy at all with that. And Wood, to your question, like for me to date women with kids, like I think I just have a unique perspective because of all the talking, and just because maybe of dating a woman with kids in the past. Like I just totally get that life. They are more important, as they should be, than me. So their time should always come first. And if I like her enough, then I'll date. But I don't know if I've said it on the show or not, but I've had the conversation with you many times. The thing that I ran into where I just kind of threw in the towel a while ago was once people find out I do a podcast about this stuff, they're like, something's up, bro. I don't want to come hang out with you. You're going to put me on the show. And I've only done that like once. So I don't know. So I was just like, all right, I'm going to sit back and relax and just let life unfold. And, if, people I'm with now work out great, if the person I'm, and if the people that aren't around me now work out, then I have to go date in the wild, then I'm just going to throw some random, like I'm be at the grocery store and I'll just throw some random product in a very good looking girl's cart and say, oops, my fault, and start a conversation that way. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
The best approach at the grocery, hands down. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm going to.
Yeah, I think that's the move when you're at the grocery store. And
I got to stop buying my groceries at Walmart, though.
Well, you don't want to do that at Walmart. Aldi's has the best produce, man. I'm telling you, and the best prices on produce too.
So you'll throw some asparagus into a cart, and all of a sudden you get pepper sprayed. You gotta watch out for that now.
But if you put pineapple in there, it might be a little different.
There you go. Canned or fresh, I wonder.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, wait a second. If you have 2 pineapples and a case of beer, she's gonna be like, this guy's a good time.
A bushel, the 30 rack of Bush Light.
There you go.
Oh, that and the Natty Light, that'll get it every time. Oh man. All right. So that's all good stuff. And actually there's not terribly much more. I mean, Carlos, you dated with intent. I think that's the biggest thing. Like if you could give anybody some thoughts and takes on what worked for you, what would be it besides that?
The only, like I said, the only thoughts that I would say, and the only thing that's really meaningful is look towards your future. Quit trying to live for the moment. I know everybody says, live for the moment, have your fun, this and that. And that is true to an extent, but like with everything else, it comes in moderation. I think having an end goal and figuring that out early will help you in the long run so much more. You never know, you could be messing around, fooling around, doing all this crazy stuff, meet somebody and kick them to the side, and they could have been the best thing in the world to you down the road. You can never see the future. But if you give a little bit of chance to those people or those women that might in the beginning seem a little, I don't want to say off, but a little bit like you just timid or shy or whatever the case might be. Maybe it doesn't click right away in that exact second. Like just give it a chance. And I know for guys, it's a little bit easier to say that because we aren't, getting hit on everywhere per se. But there are a lot of good people out there, and there's also a lot of bad people. But I think going into it with the intentions of finding your wife, what will change the way you view these women, and in the middle of going out with them, just don't try too hard. Just don't be fake. That's the only advice I could say. Just be yourself. And that sounds cliche. It really does. But when you're just acting normal, when you're going into it with little expectations, with if something happens, cool. If something doesn't, I'm not going to be heartbroken over it. It just takes so much weight off your shoulders. You become so much more natural. The conversation just flows at that point, and it takes off.
Yeah, I think the couple big things there is it's so much easier to say, like it's easy to say be yourself, and I think it's easy. I think the three of us probably have no problem doing it. And I have so many people are so nervous. Like the thing that I've talked about a lot, because I've heard way more often than I ever thought it was, guys that lie about their height on dating apps. I just didn't quite understand that. They'll say they're 6 foot, and they show up and they're 5'2", and I mean, like, size matters, and that's one lie that you're just not going to get away with. So like they just even have a hard time to that aspect, because the insecurities are so big. Then the other part too is just like when you run into these sites and you're out there trying to, I guess, find whatever it is. Like I've always said, like in the beginning, there's FOMO. Like it feels like people, like it's fast food dating, and they don't take the time to where if there's an issue to work out the issue, they just say, all right, I'm going to go to the next person on my roster and move on from that person instead of trying to work through it, which is exactly, I think, the same sentiment that you're saying.
Yeah, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. And unfortunately, a lot of relationships end prematurely because people think, hey, you know what, this guy or whatever, or this girl isn't doing this or that for me. And instead of trying to talk, communicate, people are very naturally afraid of confrontation. They just go on their phone, whip up Bumble or Tinder, and then hit up whatever's next. Yeah. Before you know it, you just ended up you dig yourself a deeper and deeper hole. And that guy or that woman's going to be married with a family, and there's no going back from that. Like you said, fear of missing out. Oh, could this be better? Could this be better? Instead of being happy and content and just blessed with what you have and taking that in and building something off of that foundation, too many people just jump ship and run.
Wood, what you got?
Can I say it on this show? Will you leave it in if I say it?
I don't plan on editing it out, so you can go ahead and say it.
Ride a shark.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said that since a few different podcasts ago.
A long time since I've got to say that.
But nothing else on to add on what to do and what not to do, bro.
No, I mean, I think that's very spot on. I think it's very, very pointed and very on purpose. I think it's a great way to finish it out.
Thank you for being along for the ride on the Swipe Wrong podcast, where we take everyday people like you and me telling their everyday stories of their swipe right life. Show is produced by Jay Pelham. He is the host of Pelham Place. If you want to reach out to the show and tell us your story, we'd love to hear it. Give us a call. Google Voice us at 317-426-6616. Leave your information and we'll get back to you, or just your story. You can also email us at swipewrongpod@gmail.com. We are on Insta, Facebook, TikTok. We're out there. I am Chaos, the host of Chaotic Commentary. You can find me pretty much anywhere that you see me. And next week, the saga continues.
Swipe wrong. Swipe wrong.